what you are told by the mainstream media and so-called human authorities and history books and, orthodox sources and authoritarian sources is a deceptive narrative, a false landscape of lies and half-truths and manipulations, so as to keep people ignorant of the plans and intentions and activities of service-to-self leadership and off-planet service-to-self groups, like Ra would say, Orion Empire, 4D negative. Now, to the extent that people are afraid to confront truth in general, to the extent that people have a weak stomach for bitter and sour and rancid, painful truths that we react to with painful response, truths, realities of life or history or situations or ourselves that we hate or we think we can't handle or we feel fear and or vulnerability regarding, to the extent that we can't get beyond our reactions, our emotional reactivity to truth, then people will stay in the social matrix. You see, the thing about piercing the social matrix is that what's being hidden is evil. It's ugly. It's heinous. It's wicked. It's bad. It's ugly and unpleasant to look at, and we have natural heart shock or heart pain to see it clearly. Yet, only by seeing that clearly and then looking at the causes of it and determining for ourselves, why is this happening? Whose agenda does it serve? What agenda is it serving and leading to? What's going on here metaphysically? Also, in terms of soul progression and positive-negative polarity, to the extent that the person is not willing to look into all that, they'll stay under the veil or in the human matrix. And so people perpetuate it by a very understandable aversion to that which is evil and ugly and wicked and heinous and complicated. And so you have to develop a strong stomach if you want to look into, what evil and wickedness and ugliness is all about. Defining the matrix, we talked about the terms cosmic matrix and social matrix. In the movie The Matrix, which I think is very important as a symbolic presentation of a lot of the metaphysics of human incarnation and social life. In that movie, in this trilogy, the Matrix is a false virtual reality that is associated with simply the perceptual mechanism and electrical processing, the brain-body system, and it's a kind of shroud or a veiled it provides a veiled, illusory reality that people believe in but isn't so. And it was created by evil agents and the architect, and a very Gnostic kind of situation, like the agents are the archons and the architect is the demiurge, exactly as the Christian Gnostics talked about 2,000 years ago. So the architect in the Matrix series can be seen as the demiurge, the one who's the leader of the archons, like agents and Agent Smith and all the other agents listening. This, in my view, it presents something what I'm calling the social matrix or the human matrix. But then there's a cosmic matrix, another veil, which Ra talks about, which is basically the separation of 3D physical in our body awareness and consciousness into what we call a conscious mind and an unconscious. The conscious mind is basically the five senses: touch, taste, smell, sight, hearing, the five sense realms of spheres of sense perception, and then the intellect is six, which includes, logic and thought formation and memory and imagination, and you can call intuition maybe, or creativity. These five physical senses and mental consciousness sense are the feed or the main sources of what we call conscious mind experience, our personal experience. That is the formation of personal experience. That separation between what we're easily aware of, the five senses and the intellect, conscious mind, and the deeper mind, or all the things we don't know, perceiving multidimensionally, perceiving atomic movement, perceiving energy fields, perceiving our origin and our destination, understanding even what you did yesterday. Do you remember what you did minute by minute yesterday? Of course you don't. I don't. Why? Because it's fallen into the unconscious, the subconscious. Why? Because that's the structure of mind in mind-body-spirit complex in third density physical, according to the Logos, the creator of the seven-dimensional system, according to Ra. So, in the raw material they talk about the veil in mind, that this is, so we'll start with this, the cosmic matrix, or the veil made by God, made by the creator of light in the raw material. And so the view is just that to enhance soul evolution, to be a kind of irritant or a catalyst or an accelerant to personal seeking, personal development of what we are. Ra said, the purpose of incarnation, the whole purpose of life, the purpose of incarnation is the evolution of mind, body, spirit. Very simple. So the purpose of life is a very easy question to answer. And the four purposes for wanderers living on earth, Ra explained very clearly to understand the general, the tetrad of four purposes for wanderers incarnating, and then the specifics of our personal karmic challenges and program catalysts from higher self before birth that each person creates for themselves, more or less. That is the personal life purpose. So there's the purpose of life for each individual, which is what's difficult for them. There's the purpose of life for wanderers as a whole. These are not difficult to answer. Not the whole answer, but we can start. Likewise, the purpose for this veil in mind is to encourage beings to seek. Ra said, where there is no misunderstanding, there are no potentials for understanding. It's a typical yin-yang kind of Taoist view. Being in this body, which is very weak and frail, and human body, it's very delicate, really. Different than a, hippopotamus body or gorilla body, kind of big and tough. Human body is made somewhat frail, so that humans will depend on each other, so that humans can more readily evolve themselves as catalyst for soul evolution, created by the source of light in the seven-dimensional system in which we're living. And so it's the Logos, which in Greek means word. Heraclitus talked about it. Ra talks about the Logos as a kind of aspect of the one infinite creator that can be a solar being and manage and make the laws for solar systems. And so we're talking about evolution of souls from the level of minerals, plants, animals, second density, human 3, and beyond. So, if you really want to explain all of this, the Matrix, you have to explain soul evolution through the 7 dimensions. The veil in mind is the bulk of what we don't know is by design, and anybody can increase consciousness and make the unconscious conscious for sure. But it's just part of the setup for this dimension, for the mind awareness, mind consciousness, for the formation of experience or personal experience in this dimension, that there's so much we're unconscious of. And it's not done by the evil negatives. It's simply part of the equipment, the setup of the hardware in 3D physical body. And there's nothing wrong with it. And one can become a Buddha also. And one can become fully enlightened and have full development of the 7 chakras and omniscience too. Not that I have, but it's totally possible. So it's a veil, and wanderers have a hard time with it. Like, why can't I control my heartbeat? Why can't I never eat if I don't want to? Why do I have to sleep? Why does the body have these limitations? Why is there so much I don't remember about myself, I don't know about myself, I can't answer about myself? Why does humanity have so much confusion? They can't agree on any metaphysics, really. Why? That's much of that comes from the veil in mind in 3D physical. That's part of the equipment and the law, the ways that this 7-dimensional situation was set up by the Creator. Looking through a veil darkly, this kind of thing, through a glass darkly, it's just like Plato's cave. That's the situation, and it's, Ra said, understanding is not of your density. Understanding is not of your density, it's not of third density. It's associated with heart. However, we can seek to open heart and develop wisdom in each interaction with each person. The process of 3D incarnation as a whole, or soul evolution as a whole, is basically understanding the 7 chakras. And so that means self-understanding. So that's the same Delphic, Delphi oracle saying, know thyself. So, as above, so below. As within, so without. If you know yourself really deeply, you will eventually know totality. Because there's no impenetrable barrier between self and the field, or the environment, or creation, or all. So, The veil is it's just what we have to work with, and acknowledging that we don't know very much, and that's okay. And so, I mean, I personally understand that everything I understand is a drop in the bucket compared to what is possible to understand, and what I will approach that understanding after death, after leaving this body. So I think that a lot of New Age people are a little, some people are proud, and some people have made it an ego endeavor to try to understand everything and make the most full, complete, complex theories of everything. But actually, in my humble opinion, what we know here, unless you're a Buddha, unless you have multiple penetrations of nirvana, and the deathless, and the cessation of becoming, and unbinding in Buddhism, unless you've had multiple penetrations of contact with intelligent infinity, or contact with infinity, unless a person has had that, they should just assume that their understanding is quite limited. And there's nothing wrong with that. The purpose of human life is not to become a scholar on infinite metaphysics, or an infinite knowing person. The purpose of this dimension is to learn the ways of love. And so that can very well be done in relationship, but both people have to know the principles of love, what the green ray, heart chakra is all about. So anyway, that's a basic discussion of the cosmic matrix, or the logoic matrix. And then the social matrix is a different matter. That's closer to the movie, The Matrix, where there's an artificial shroud put over people, or kind of related to brain chemistry and neuroelectrical signals and all that, where we have a false view of human society, and that has been done by, Illuminati and the Merovingians, and that's very true, actually. And they're guided by Orion 40 negative, of course, higher dimensional negative ET, of course. The eye in the sky above the capstone, the unfinished capstone. The unfinished capstone is the elite portion of the Illuminati, which are basically bloodlines and trace back to Egypt and Atlantis if they can. Above the unfinished capstone, of course, is the eye in the sky, the single eye, which of course is 4D negative Orion, service to self, extraterrestrial groups that have been here from, from before human civilization started. Because they're older groups, they're in 4D negative. Nothing strange about that. And so the raft, the massive bulwark of lies and deceptions and false history and media propaganda and consensus, manufacturing consensus, and, today it's endless lies. The mainstream media is just a ministry of propaganda globally, generally, mainstream media. I mean, smart people are coming to realize that. That's the social matrix. Life on Earth is not as the mainstream media tells you, and human history is not quite only what's told in history books. History is written by the victors. But you see, to really understand these two veils or matrices, and to really have a strong foundation in penetrating both of them, people have to understand that this incarnation is like a lacunae. It's like the space within parentheses in an endless sentence. It's a phase of our infinite progression. It's a phase of the flow, the flow of infinite experience. We have lived before this incarnation. We will live after this body falls away. And the nature of the limits, the limitations to the quality of experience, the quality of life, or how well we are within this incarnation, within this temporary phase of our infinite existence. The limitations come with the program, or with the decision to make this incarnation. We all decided to be here. We all decided to put ourselves into this body, in this world, where this body-mind-spirit complex, or body-related incarnation, has this fundamental limitation in mind in terms of limited consciousness, limited perceptions, and we're living in this world of mixed polarity, or service-to-self leadership, that is a constant lying factory. Deception, powers and principalities, they lie because there's no truth in them. Absolutely. We chose to be here. If you want to penetrate the human matrix, or the Illuminati-type matrix, you very much can. Just read and read and read and think and listen and ponder and consider, and you'll discover far more truth than you might want. In terms of the cosmic matrix, the veil in mind, that requires spiritual practice and study of a different sort. Not mainly outer study, but inner study. What is the nature of all my pain? What are the causes of all my pain? Pain in body, pain, confusion in mind, spiritual doubt, essential self-doubt, whatever. What are the causes? How has it come to be that any pain and limitation in body, any pain, limitation, and confusion in mind is my experience now? How did I co-create that? So, if people don't want to take responsibility for their incarnation and their body conditions and their mind conditions, that's just fine. If you don't believe in reincarnation and you don't believe in karma and you don't believe in higher dimensions, that's just fine, but you've betrayed your soul. You have just rejected yourself, your greater self, which is fine. Go right ahead. A person doesn't have to believe metaphysics to be a virtuous person. There are some people who are very virtuous and moral and ethical and really kind and really selfless and really giving and really good, but they just don't know metaphysics. And they admit, I can't believe it because there's no proof. But I believe in virtue and goodness. That kind of person surely can graduate or harvest or make the grade or develop themselves sufficiently to move right along. Because the purpose here is not for the development of wisdom. The purpose of 3D is to learn the ways of love, to move from third chakra to fourth. That's it. If you want to, though, go beyond the limitations of consciousness that are inbuilt to the body and brain we're using, in 3D physical, the cosmic matrix, you simply need to do deep spiritual practice as the fountainhead of deep and effective healing and balance. You have to really heal your emotional pain and wrong views and self-conflicts and very honestly assess oneself and move to virtue and wisdom and balance. And then do intensive spiritual practice in a tradition that's for real and can really lead the mind beyond limitations. So, it's all possible. So that's what's required to pierce the veil. And they're different, So one veil is pierced by reading of alternative news and alternative history and revisionist history and listen, let everybody have a hearing and consider it and find your own answers. And the cosmic matrix or veil is pierced really by intensive, from very deep and sincere and frank self-understanding, self-love, self-healing, balance, development of virtue, development of discernment, and then intensive spiritual practice that activates sixth chakra. What you are told by the mainstream media and so-called human authorities and history books and orthodox sources and authoritarian sources is a deceptive narrative, a false landscape of lies and half-truths and manipulations, so as to keep people ignorant of the plans and intentions and activities of service-to-self leadership and off-planet service-to-self groups, like Ra would say, Orion Empire, 4D negative. Now, to the extent that people are afraid to confront truth in general, to the extent that people have a weak stomach for bitter and sour and rancid, painful truths that we react to with painful response, truths, realities of life or history or situations or ourselves that we hate or we think we can't handle or we feel fear and or vulnerability regarding, to the extent that we can't get beyond our reactions, our emotional reactivity to truth, then people will stay in the social matrix. You see, the thing about piercing the social matrix is that what's being hidden is evil. It's ugly. It's heinous. It's wicked. It's bad. It's ugly and unpleasant to look at, and we have natural heart shock or heart pain to see it clearly. Yet, only by seeing that clearly and then looking at the causes of it and determining for ourselves, why is this happening? Whose agenda does it serve? What agenda is it serving and leading to? What's going on here metaphysically? Also, in terms of soul progression and positive-negative polarity, to the extent that the person is not willing to look into all that, they'll stay under the veil or in the human matrix. And so people perpetuate it by a very understandable aversion to that which is evil and ugly and wicked and heinous and complicated. And so you have to develop a strong stomach if you want to look into, what evil and wickedness and ugliness is all about. I mean, the left-hand path, service self, Illuminati leadership, the highest levels, involves very deep pathology, psychological pathology, very hatred of love, hatred of beauty, hatred of goodness, hatred of freedom or independence for others, a sadism, an attachment to pain and blood and flesh and matter and aggrandizement and all these low vibrations. And so, to the extent that we have lower chakra blockages, we may get stuck in the contemplation of all that lower frequency or lower chakra activity. All those realities that are associated with lower chakra blockage, because the negative path maintains their first, second, third, fourth chakra blockages and is involved in control and domination and deception and power manipulations and all that. So to the extent that we're unclear or still blocked emotionally or afraid or feel vulnerable or we feel weak and feel that I can't handle it or don't value ourselves and think I'm too stupid, I can't understand it, to the extent that we're stuck that way, then we remain in the human matrix. So the antidote to being trapped in the human matrix is self-transformation, is spiritual growth, is deep self-healing and honesty and release of what we don't need. So self-transformation with love and wisdom, self-love and understanding, wisdom and discernment and honesty, that's the cure for remaining stuck and under the veil of the human matrix. The complacency of humanity or individuals to some extent is based on unfulfilled dependency needs of childhood. It's natural, normal, it's healthy, it's part of the plan that a baby, a newborn, an infant, a young child, a middle young child up to age 5, 10, whatever, is dependent on parents, like they were dependent, the fetus is dependent on the mother in the womb, the infant is dependent on the mother, the toddler, the young child, dependent on mother and father maybe, and, for support. But most parents don't love well. So most people came out of childhood being unable to depend on their parents as they should have in those years when they were that dependent, and therefore grow out of it and build a healthy sense of self based on feeling loved and valued and protected and cared for. So the sense of self is damaged from the insufficient loving and care of the parents, normally. And then the person grows into adulthood with unrecognized, unmet dependency needs and complexes from early childhood that they then project onto authority or their partner or something and lose, they're seeking mommy and daddy. And so that's projected onto the state or to the corporation or to one's boss or the military hierarchy or the religion, the priest, or, one's career, or one's wife or partner or husband, or something. I deserve to be taken care of without responsibility for autonomy. Because I never got it, you should give it to me now. I mean, why do people get involved in relationship in the first place, in intimacy, partnership? I want to get from you what I can't obviously get from me alone. So there's it's distortion that leads to intimacy, generally. Now, there are people who are very well and also involved in intimacy and partnership. But to the extent that we don't heal our infantilism, infantility, or our dependency needs, or our unwillingness to really take responsibility for ourselves and our life and our well-being moment by moment, to the extent that the person doesn't feel that they deserve what they get, this is not fair, it's not fair, you did it, or you should give to me, you should be what I want you to be, the world should be as I imagine it ought to be, ideally. To the extent that we stay with all that childishness which is just unreasonability, that's all. Well, it's unreasonable expectation. You mean, if I drop my plate, I should expect it to fall on the floor and crash. But if I enter a relationship and I feel so wonderful, and I expect that my partner feels the same way, or that their feeling never changes, or that they have time for me whenever I want, that's unreasonable. If you expect people with lots of money and power to care about people who don't have money and power, you're foolish. And so, what is the psychodynamic basis of dependency and authoritarianism, seeking authority, or seeking to become authoritarian, seeking to control or be controlled, seeking to follow what you're told or tell others what to do? What are the psychological dynamics that are the basis of that? Well, that's first, second, third chakra blockage, obviously. Insufficient love and wisdom and self-understanding and self-regard and true self-appreciation, of course. So the basis of all of that is unrecognized psychological wounding and conflicts that the person has been unwilling to confront within themselves, because it's too painful or too shameful, or they think they're too stupid, or it's too complicated, or they just don't want to deal with it. And then they end up being easy prey and an easy mark for clever deceivers. And that's, really quite normal today. But, honestly, it's always been that way. I mean, 500 years ago, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, people were not, sharp, clear, knowing everything, or so deeply beyond veils and things, But the question is about really seeking. Do you seek or not? And if you think that life is only one incarnation, you only live once, there's no afterlife, there's no karma, there are no higher dimensions, there's no soul, there's no schemed evolution, you just have a body and you die and it's all over, and everything is about material life and personal relationships and feelings and body, and that's it. That miserable mind is very comfortable remaining in ignorance or in a compromised position without seeking. And the opposite is a metaphysical sensitivity that recognizes, well, maybe these ideas about karma and multiple lifetimes and reincarnation and higher dimensions and higher self and God and cosmic purpose and things like that, maybe it's true. And yet I don't understand it. And I think it's important to me to understand it and how to make my life better and develop myself. That's important. If the person knows that that's important, then they will, by and by, keep seeking their own growth. You don't have to belong to a religion, you don't have to belong to any philosophy, but a sense that I am more than this body and mind. This universe, or this life, my life, is more than just what I see in front of me. There's something greater going on here, and I wish to know it, and I wish to be really well, and then that person will not simply eat what they're fed or believe what they're told, and will become a free thinker. But for many people, they're scared to be a free thinker, and they haven't developed their mind much, and therefore they actually cannot think very well. They can't discern. And in Buddhism, Gautama said, in terms of what's the karma that leads to discernment. Some people are more discerning than others, obviously. Some people are not tricked by things, and some people are shocked when they discover what really is going on. The one who's not shocked may be one who has more discernment than the one who was shocked because they never saw it coming. How is it that people get more discernment or are of more discernment naturally? Well, according to Gautama Buddha, is that they consistently have asked the wise and the worthy what's true and what's false, what's good and what's unhelpful, what conduces to my long-term welfare and benefit and what doesn't, what's valuable and what's not. And then they've taken it in and considered for themselves how they think about it, and they were seeking value. They had the value that knowing and self-development is essential to well-being. My well-being, my experience here is rooted in is the degree to which I have wisdom and understanding and virtue and purity in some sense, and that the quality of my life depends on what I make of myself. not simply what I get and hold and keep and my social position. That real well-being comes from inner transformation, is the product of an attitude or the way of mind, the way this mind is. And that's the basis of spiritual path, and that's what will lead people to penetrate both of these veils beyond the tissue of lies of human leadership and orthodoxy and authoritarianism, and through the veil in the 3D physical mind, brain itself, that's associated with how much we don't know. But when spiritual development really is proceeding nicely, one is certainly more open to intuition and direct knowing and gnosis and knowing without needing to think and logic it out. So that both veils are pierced ultimately by the person's commitment to learning and self-development and making something valuable of themselves. And that would naturally include desire to be of benefit to others. That just comes naturally. That doesn't have to be my main value. If you're good to yourself, you'll naturally be good to others. If your goodness to self is truly heart-related. If it's real heart-centered goodness and being true to yourself, that heart-centered authenticity naturally is of service to all.